Aloha. How's that for a welcoming soundtrack? I feel right at home. Thank you very much for inviting me to join you here today. It's a real pleasure and privilege to be able to come here and share a few thoughts, but really most importantly to thank you for the work that you do every day. As we witnessed the unfortunate accident that occurred in New Jersey just last week, I want you to know that myself, many people from my district, people in Washington as it occurred, our thoughts and prayers were with all of those who were affected by that accident. And it was a reminder that's important for all of us to remember the sacrifice and the great responsibility that each of you carry as transit workers. This does not come lightly, so thank you for what you do. As we're in the midst of an interesting election year, and the clips that they chose to play highlight some of the unexpected turns in my own small role in this election year that in the beginning I could not have foreseen. But through the course of the last several months, as many of you may have felt or have heard from other people, much of the sentiment that I have heard has been centered around frustration. Frustration about the undue influence of ultra-wealthy and special corporate interests on our politics and policies. Frustration that the voices of the people are not being adequately represented or even heard. Frustration that issues like the Trans-Pacific Partnership trade deal that are being debated are really lacking the core and substance of the debate that we deserve in this country. Lacking the foremost question about trade deals like this is, do they work to serve the best interest of our economy and our working people? And so the result of all this frustration that I have seen in my home state of Hawaii, unfortunately, has been abysmally low voter turnout. People who have a vested interest in our future just saying, look, I'm not going to waste my time. I have better things to do. But as I traveled with Bernie Sanders campaigning across the country, I saw something that inspired me and gave me hope, and that was courage. That people were coming out and engaging in the process. They were very excited because for the first time in a very long time, they felt like their voices were being heard and that they could impact positively, make this massive and historic change, even up against what seemed like insurmountable odds. It gave me great joy when ATU came out displaying this great courage, coming out to support and endorse Bernie Sanders at a time when it wasn't popular to do so, turning out members and supporters, so many of you all across the country, to get out the important message that we were delivering, the Bernie Sanders message of bringing back a government of, by, and for the people. As you saw in the clip, I had resigned as a vice chair of the DNC earlier this year. It was actually the day after South Carolina primaries, tough day for the Bernie campaign, but I recognized and knew that I could not stand on the sidelines sitting in a neutral position as this important election year folded out. And I was proud to take that action, proud to join people like you and millions of others across the country in bringing to light and speaking at every possible platform about how we needed to put the interest in the well-being of our people and our planet at the forefront of our policies. My phone was ringing off the hook the day I made that announcement. Friends of mine in Washington were calling and saying, Tulsi, are you crazy? What did you just do? People were worried that I was tarnishing my so-called political career or throwing my political future down the drain. But as I heard these concerns from people who I knew cared about me, it reminded me of everything that's wrong with Washington, that this would be the place where people would believe that standing up for your principles and taking action for what is right for the people could possibly be bad. And this gave me even greater resolve to continue down the path that I had begun. I've served now in the Hawaii Army National Guard for almost 14 years. I enlisted back in 2003, deployed a couple of times to the Middle East and served both as an enlisted soldier and then went through officer school and deployed as a platoon leader during my second deployment. But through my years during both training and deployments, I learned an important lesson early on about how as leaders we are often presented with two choices: the hard right over the easy wrong. And I learned that the sign of true leadership is making that hard right decision. That doesn't serve your own self-interest, but rather serves the interests of those you serve. This is true in the military, as true as it is in politics. And the ATU, all of you have displayed this tremendous courage of choosing that hard right over the easy wrong, not only in this election cycle, but time and time again being at the forefront of important issues facing our country. This is something that I strive to do every day, my work for Hawaii and my work for our future. Even though our outcome in the presidential primary was disappointing and was not what we had hoped for, I hope that each of you recognizes the truly historic impact that you have made and what we accomplished together. That in small towns and big cities all across the country, millions of people were inspired themselves to take action. Yes, to vote, but so many more to do even greater actions, to start organizing, to bring other people into the fold, to be more vocal and advocate on issues that are important to all of us. Because for once, again, even though the outcome was disappointing, for once they saw what they could do and the power behind your voices. Throughout the campaign, we heard Bernie Sanders say time and time again that this election was not about him. His campaign, his revolution was not about him. It was about every single one of us coming together, challenging an establishment that had completely turned down the volume and tuned us out, coming together to organize against difficult odds and bringing about real progressive change. And that is where we've got to recognize that our fight is far from over. Bernie is continuing this through his organization, Our Revolution. I know Larry Cohen is here today. Larry, you wave. There he is. Larry is here today inviting all of us to continue this revolution with Our Revolution. But the bottom line is that we have a responsibility here, as well as an opportunity, to lead with courage and conviction. Continuing this movement by fighting to fix our broken political system, bringing about true campaign finance reform, rebuilding aging infrastructure, ending counterproductive wars of regime change, ending our policy of being the policemen of the world, and instead taking our precious natural resources and investing them right here at home. It's no surprise to you more than anyone how far behind on these investments in infrastructure are. That we have spent trillions of dollars on interventionist wars overseas to the detriment of our need to be rebuilding and investing in our communities and our future here at home. You see the effects of this at your work every day. As bus drivers, rail operators, mechanics, station attendants, each of you are the reliable friend that people depend on in fulfilling their daily public transportation needs, but you also see so much of what needs to be fixed. Because what you do is not just about moving people and things from point A to point B. You are the doorway and the access to opportunity for so many. I'll never forget my daily bus rides, going to school and going to work. I depended on as my primary transportation, both in Hawaii as well as a staffer for Senator Akaka in Washington several years ago. Cities without public transportation that's affordable make it harder for low-income families to access employment, affordable housing, and making it harder for them to pull themselves out of poverty. I recently heard from a veteran in my district in Hawaii who was homeless, looking for a job, looking for opportunity. And when he finally found that job that would allow him to put a roof over his head once again, it was our public bus system that gave him the ability to access and get to that job. He would leave 2 hours before he had to show up for work every day just to make sure he got there on time. And that bus ride was his ticket to a stable and secure future. It's unfortunate that we are at a time when ridership is growing twice as fast as the population. Our public transit systems are also carrying out some of the steepest fare increases and deepest service cuts in recent history, and thousands of workers have been laid off. Lack of investment in infrastructure has made it less safe for you to do your jobs and has made it more costly for people to lead their daily lives, making it more expensive in the long run for taxpayers. Because the longer we wait and delay on these investments that are so necessary, the more the ticket price will be in the end. Last December in Congress, we passed the FAST Act, the Fixing America's Transportation Act. For the first time in more than a decade, we were finally able to pass legislation that would provide 4 years of certainty and funding for public transportation. But this is only 4 years. It was a success, but a disappointing one in some ways. We've got to make it a priority to continue to invest in infrastructure, to continue to improve and expand public transit and make sure that the cost actually matches what people can afford to be able to ride it. We've got to invest in you, the heartbeat, the people who make our public transit systems run every single day. In Washington, there are challenges to accomplishing all of this. For those of you who are paying attention, last week, Congress's big victory was that we averted a government shutdown and passed a continuing resolution to fund the government for 3 months. The bar has been set too low. We should expect more, and we need to demand more from our leaders in Washington. The gridlock and the partisan politics that play into this kind of lowering of the bar and expectations has to be set aside. People often ask me, how do you change this? How do you get things done in Washington? It really happens on the grassroots, by organizing, by getting involved, by mobilizing, not falling into the partisan rhetoric trap of we're the good guys and they're the bad guys, and staking your claims and pointing your weapons at each other. Because when it comes right down to it, the people getting on your trains and getting on your buses, they're not people who are designating Republican buses and Democrat buses. We are here to serve everyone, and we've got to bring people together to be able to make the changes that we need to make. Investing in infrastructure and transportation is one of those few issues where we can transcend the partisan divide to actually get things done. I mostly want to commend ATU because you have been at the forefront of so many righteous fights. I admire the work that you've done, whether it was fighting for living wages and fairness for our working men and women, fighting against the exploits of big Wall Street banks, gambling on the backs of everyday Americans, fighting for energy independence, taking strong and bold stands against projects like the Keystone Pipeline, strengthening Social Security and Medicare, standing against interventionist wars that have caused such tremendous human suffering and cost our country trillions of dollars. You have been the tip of the spear on behalf of the American people, and I couldn't be more proud to stand shoulder to shoulder with you. Our democracy is a beautiful thing. This freedom that we have is something that so many in our country have fought and died for over history, fought to protect and defend for us. And this is a responsibility in their honor and their memory that I take seriously. We know that our democracy is at its best when we, the people, continuously challenge ourselves and challenge our nation's leaders to do better, to do more, to constantly strive to be servant leaders in a government of, by, and for the people. Because if our focus is serving the people rather than just looking out for our own selfish ambition or personal gain. This is how we can effect powerful change. Yesterday was the birthday of Mahatma Gandhi, someone who wisely once said, "A small body of determined spirits, fired by an unquenchable faith in their mission, can alter the course of history." These are wise words that I often think of when I think that the obstacles are too great to take on. Because on this mission that we are on, taking on big challenges, challenging the culture of greed in Washington, bringing voice to those who have none, we are facing great resistance. We are facing great obstacles and great challenges. Change is hard, and it comes with accepting and enduring sacrifice and hardship. But what I know from my experience is that if our actions are centered and motivated on what I know is the Aloha spirit, which is love and respect, care and compassion for our fellow man and our planet, then we will understand and know and feel that love gives us the strength to endure those hardships. It gives us the intelligence and the clarity to choose those hard, right decisions, and it gives us the courage to act, to stand in the face of adversity and fight for what's right. People unfortunately mistake love for weakness, but in fact, there's nothing stronger. It is this movement fueled by love that we have all been a part of during this historic year, and that we are all committed to continuing, that can never be stopped or defeated. Thank you all for your commitment to this fight, for your work every single day. Thank you very much. Aloha.